You are in the jungle. I'm Matt Edwards. Thanks for stopping in. It is good to be here on a Friday. The Bengals in Chicago. They'll play the Bears in their second preseason game tomorrow. No one's really going to play in that game. I think Zach Taylor said we might see some guys who will play in the regular season, but none of your big-name starters are going to be in that game. A lot of the big-name starters, all of the big-name starters who are active right now, played in an inter-squad scrimmage type situation on, I don't know if it was technically a scrimmage, but you get the point. They went head-to-head. You know how joint practices work if you're listening to an NFL podcast in the middle of August. It didn't go well for the Bengals. We'll get into that soon. They had some injuries as well. Neither one of those looking good. We'll talk about that. Two, I was kind of thinking it'll be a boring practice in Chicago. I didn't think we were going to get so many reports from the reporters who went over there. Lucky assignment, by the way. Chicago, of all the NFL cities, I mean, easy drive from Cincinnati, right? Maybe you're lucky and got to fly, but just one of the great cities in America. But aside from that, figured to be a calm situation. I was coming in here today. I wanted to talk about Ja'Marr Chase, who, by the way, is with the team in Chicago. So we're kind of going back and forth here. It feels like we're walking that tightrope. Like, is Ja'Marr upset? Are the Bengals upset? What's going on here? Everyone seems cordial right now, so hopefully we can keep it that way. But let's start there because that's what I want to talk about. We'll get to the Bears stuff here shortly. We'll get to the bad Thursday that was for the Bengals in Chicago. But let's start with Ja'Marr Chase because here's what I'm wondering. As we creep closer and closer to September, at what point do we start to worry about Ja'Marr Chase? He's still got 2 years left, right? He's got this year, and then he's got the fifth-year option, which obviously a deal should be done by then, but the Bengals still control those rights for 2 years. But at what point this year, in the 2024 season, should we start worrying about Ja'Marr Chase? Is it right now? I mean, I think some people, I heard my friend Jeremy Rao say today that you could tell in the driving rain out there in Chicago that the offense missed that number one go-to guy. Now, it doesn't matter. No one's going to remember that practice no matter what happens with the Bengals 2 weeks from now. But is it right now that we should be concerned? Is it next week? Is it the week after that? And I was thinking about this today, and for me, I kind of set an over-under here. I'm setting it at August 28th, that last week of August. It'll be after the preseason's over. It will be the last non-practice week of the offseason. That will be Wednesday, the following Wednesday. So it'll be 11 days before the season opener when the Bengals host the Patriots. I'm setting that day right now, August 28th. If Ja'Marr isn't practicing by then, that's when I'm going to start to worry. Of course, everyone else can worry when they want to, but that's where I'm at right now. It's hard to tell, right? I mean, I've pointed out before that there's one particular NFL insider, a big one, who I think doesn't like the Bengals because the Bengals are pretty tight-lipped. Their front office does a great job of making sure nothing really gets leaked out there. And I think if Ja'Marr was upset, that his camp maybe would have put something out there. We saw T. Higgins do it this offseason, right? And that doesn't mean T's a bad guy. It doesn't mean Ja'Marr is more of a team player than T. It's just the way the NFL works. It's the way sports works. We see it all the time in every league. And I think I think everyone's on good terms here. We saw on the Bucks game, Jermaine Burton scores a touchdown. Zach Taylor and Ja'Marr Chase are celebrating together. Ja'Marr is in Chicago. He's been, with the exception of one practice, at every training camp practice. I don't think we need to worry yet. As far as his current deal, like I said, 2 years left. He's only making $4.8 million this year. Is that right? That's right. Yeah, $4.8 million. He gets $22 million next year on the fifth-year option. If it comes to that, it will not. I think next year, if he isn't signed to the long-term deal, that's when we could see a holdout. But we're not going to get to that point. He got a $20 million signing bonus as a rookie, by the way. So the guy's not poor. Ja'Marr's not eating ramen every night. He's doing just fine. But it's easy for me to sit here in my basement with my daughter's big stuffed tiger behind me and say that. On his rookie deal, between the signing bonus and the fifth-year option, let's say he plays that out. He won't, but let's say he did. You could sit there and say, well, that's $52 million over 5 years. Sounds like a lot of money. It's a ton of money. It really is. But it's still about half of what he'll make on his next 5-year contract, right? Probably about $30 million a year. So is that math even right? So $30 million a year plus, let's say 5 years, 30 mil, 150 million dollars. So yeah, about a third actually. I have a journalism degree, not a math degree. I mean, it's nothing compared to what he's going to make. So I'm kind of defending Jamar here, right? Because it's easy to sit there and some people say, oh, you're making $5 million. You already got the $20 million bonus. You're making $52 million over 5 years. But if you look at let's look here. The other people at his level, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, A.J. Brown, and Tyreek Hill are all making somewhere, on average, between $30 and $35 million a year. That's where Jamar Chase's next contract will land him. He will make, at a minimum, $30 million a year. Justin Jefferson makes $35 million a year. He's got the highest average annual value. Jamar might surpass him. I think, if anything, he's second to JJ. I don't think he's going to be. I think he'll be closer to 35 than 30. We'll see. Right now, listen to this. As far as that average annual value number I mentioned, Jamar, 39th amongst receivers. 39th. Best bargain in the league. The only other guy you could even argue is as good as a bargain of him is C.J. Stroud. And we'll see if C.J. Stroud replicates that rookie year, right? Obviously, the quarterbacks on the rookie deals, we saw this with Joe Burrow. We've seen it with every quarterback who's made the Super Bowl. Brock Purdy, I guess, is probably in that argument as well, but I'm not as high on Brock as everyone else. I'm not going to shout system quarterback, but he's a guy I think if he goes and plays, I don't know, where do you want to put him? In New Orleans instead of San Francisco? Yeah, if he's down there instead of with Kyle Shanahan, are we still talking about him the same way some people do? I don't know, but I highly doubt it. Jamar Chase is 1 or 2 when it comes to bargains in the league. Not a doubt about that in my mind. These contracts aren't getting cheaper either. I mean, it's not like the Bengals are going to save money by holding out. I don't think the Bengals are trying to save money. Everyone wants to save money, obviously, but I think the Bengals are probably in a situation where they're trying to figure all this stuff out. We're going to go through the guys they got to pay over the next 8 to 12 months, and it's a lot. Jamar's at the top of the list, but there's other guys they need to get to. It's a lot of money. So Justin Jefferson kind of did the same thing last season. He went to training camp and he practiced, I believe. He didn't go to the off-season stuff that was voluntary. He kind of did something, similar to Jamar, where things were cordial, things were cool, but he made it clear, yeah, I want a new deal. I want to get paid. I'm the best receiver in the league. I want to get paid like it. And obviously the Vikings didn't budge. JJ still played, and here he is, the highest paid receiver in the league. And we might see a similar situation with Jamar. I don't think the Bengals pay him this year, which, is that the right move? I don't know. It's so easy to sit here and say, well, you're going to pay $37 million a year next year. You could probably get him at 34 this year, 33 this year, whatever it is. I don't have those numbers in front of me. You guys just heard me on this podcast get half confused with a third. I'm not a mathematician. What I do know is he's worth a lot of money. He's 1 or 2 in the league when it comes to receivers and what they should be making, and things will get done. The original question, when should we worry? I'm going to worry on August 29th. If he's not out there on the 28th, I'm going to take a few deep breaths. I'm going to have a beer. And the 29th, I'm going to say, oh my God, the Bengals play in 10 days and Jamar Chase hasn't practiced this year. That's when I'll worry. So we'll see, man. Maybe it unfolds the same way as Justin Jefferson. And Jamar plays this year, makes that paltry $4.8 million. How disgusting would it be to only make $4.8 million this year? And Jamar probably tops Justin Jefferson's number that next year if this is what it comes down to. And if he gets paid now, I mean, it's going to work out. Jamar Chase is getting paid no matter what. But he wants paid now, and that's the way it works in this league. You never know what's going to happen. So Jamar will make more money next year, or he'll make a lot of money this year. He's going to be okay. We do not need to start Jamar Chase a GoFundMe, although if you got the extra money and you want to see him out there during training camp, not the worst idea in the world. So that's where we're at. I'm not worried about Jamar right now. Bengals have some. I mean, again, I've said this before. Jamar Chase set out his entire last season with LSU, gets taken number 5 overall by the Bengals, and sets a franchise record for receiving yards in a season. So Jamar is a guy who, he is such an incredible athlete and an incredible receiver. He's such a natural at the position that he's going to be okay. He's not sitting around eating potato chips and playing Xbox. He's going to be all right. Okay, let's see. What else? We have any? Oh, Okay. Yeah, we went through the receivers. Okay, good. Good. Great bargain. Going through my notes here with our producer, which is also me. I did wonder. This is kind of a stretch. I'll say this. I was on a run the other day, and I did have to wonder to myself if the Bengals got a deal done with Jamar over the next few days, even, let's say. Does it maybe stick a little thorn in the side of the team in Pittsburgh as far as that Ayuk situation goes? Can you drive his number one way or the other? I don't know. And again, I'm not necessarily smart enough to figure the money stuff out. I probably am smart enough, but I'm done learning when it comes to numbers. But could the Bengals maybe drive that number up a little? Maybe make Pittsburgh's life a little bit more difficult? I don't know. But I think it's possible. I don't know that they're talking about that at One Paycor Stadium, but I think it would be a nice little cherry on top if the Jamar deal got done and they kind of put Pittsburgh in an odd situation at the same time. Don't even know if that's a possible thing. That's where my mind goes when I'm on runs. If you're a runner, you run long distances, you got a lot of time to think and a lot of things go through your mind. So, that's that. One thing maybe some people are worried about is what happened in Chicago on Thursday. So, Bengals go to Chicago. Jamar's there, Joe's there, everyone's there. And apparently they look really bad. Reading everyone who was there, everyone who covers the team and went to Chicago, Joe Burrow throws 3 interceptions. It's in the rain. T. Higgins has some drops. Several receivers have drops. I'm seeing this and I'm thinking, not ideal, but also good. Get that out of the way now. Get into practice. Go over to a team that just had the number 1 overall pick. They had it via trade, but still, they stunk last year, and they have stunk for a while. Go to Chicago. Suck a little. I like that. I love this team with a chip on their shoulder. And I can guarantee you they're not losing any sleep over it tonight because they know it's a bad practice. Every team has bad practices. Every team has bad games. I like it. It's easy to sit around and say, you go in there and you don't play well against Chicago. Chicago, they're an NFL team. You go to every Super Bowl winning team, and I know it's August and I'm saying the word Super Bowl. You go to every Super Bowl winning team over the past 10 years, you go on their schedule, they had at least one dud. At least one Sunday where it actually mattered, they didn't show up. So I'm not going to be upset about the Bengals not showing up on a Thursday in August against the Chicago Bears when it's pouring down rain and they have a bad day. Everyone has bad days. Bengals had one. Good. Get a little ticked off. Play better. I like it. I'm absolutely good with it. No one's going to remember that practice. No one. We won't remember it next week. The only guys who will remember it, unfortunately, it looks like Chris Evans done for the year. Probably the Bengals' 4th-string running back, but we've seen him make some plays, man. We have seen him make some plays. He's one of those guys, as soon as you forget about him, he gets hit on a 3rd and 17 to keep a drive alive in the 4th quarter, somehow in a 5-wide formation. So Chris Evans, that sucks. He was probably the number 4 running back, like I said. But at any rate, locker room guy, people love him, played on special teams. He's returned kicks. He's a guy who you don't want to lose anyone. But again, not ideal. It sounds like torn Achilles, I think, was the deal there. And Deontay Smith, who in that tackle rotation on the offensive side of the ball, apparently also carted off with an air cast on his leg. I mean, the offensive tackle situation right now, my God. So let's just see on the left side, Orlando Brown Jr., good. But second to him on the depth chart is Jackson Carman, who, I mean, he might as well be playing with cast on his legs the way we saw out of him in that first preseason game. And then on the right side, I didn't even mention. I mean, we know Amarius Mims. He's banged up. Right after on the podcast on Monday, I talk about how nice it was to see him get out of there fine. So he's a little banged up. I think it's a strained pec. I should have wrote this stuff down. Yeah, it's a strained pec. And then Trent Williams, who he's battling with, who he leaves today in Chicago with lower back tightness. So that happens, and then Deontay Smith. So not an ideal situation. I mean, you're talking about 4 tackles already with issues. Jackson Carman just sucks. And then you've got Trent Brown and Amarius Mims just banged up. And then Deontay Smith, it looks like they have not said anything on him yet. Jordan Schultz, by the way, is the guy who is reporting Chris Evans out for the season. Check it again here. I don't see anything on Deontay Smith yet. But doesn't look good. Does not look good. He was a guy hopefully you weren't going to see on the field anyways because he's a depth guy. I think he was third on the depth chart at right tackle. But at any rate, man, he's a guy who has played, who has NFL experience, who they like, and they both got carted off today. The thing with, like, Mims and Trent Brown is I always wonder, like, being that big isn't natural. Like, of course your body's going to break. Of course your back hurts, Trent Brown. You're like 6'8", 360. Like, you're not supposed to be like that. So that's one of the things where I feel like guys who are that size, there's just always, like, if you're an NBA player, you're skinny. If you've ever been, like, up close with NBA players, they're 6'8", but I mean, they're like 230. It's incredible. Like, being around, I was down on the Ohio State sideline one time when the Cavs 2016 championship was there, and I'm standing like 20 feet from them. I mean, J.R. Smith just rail thin. Rail thin. He's chiseled like all those guys are, but just oddly thin. All those guys. Some of the guys, I mean, they'll be like 6'7". They're calves. You could take two of my hands, which are pretty average, if not small hands. If you're on YouTube, they're not small, but you get it. Like, you could wrap them around those guys' calves. So those guys like that, that's one thing. When you're 6'8" and pushing 4 bills on your bad days, yeah, you're going to have low back pain. Yeah, your body's not going to work right. So that's what worries me about those guys. Who knows? We'll see, but just not an ideal situation. I mean, we're one preseason game in. You've got Cam Sample out already. You've got Chris Evans. Looks like Deontay Smith is not doing well. And then you've got your 2 right tackles, one of whom looked awesome in the preseason game, already beat up as well. So that's where the preseason matters. I kind of decided after the last episode, like, I don't know how much more preseason I can talk. It doesn't really matter. It used to 10 years ago, but then Sean McVay came along. Zach Taylor was actually on that staff when Sean McVay was like, I'm not playing any of my guys in the preseason. And people are like, young coach thinks he knows what he's doing. And then they go 11-1 to start the year. So, yeah, Zach Taylor from that school. Obviously, we saw some guys in that game against the Bucs. But from here out, if you want to get in the weeds with the depth stuff, so be it. But there's not a lot we're going to learn. We're going to learn more from these practices than we are from the actual preseason games. So don't think we'll see anything else from your starters, from your superstars in the preseason. And, yeah, maybe that punter battle. I'm excited to watch that. That's quite literally probably the biggest thing left that we'll see in the preseason is who is going to be the punter. And that's a big thing. So it'll be something to watch. And, God, just no more injuries. I mean, again, one game in, and it looks like 3 guys are out for the year already. So, again, depth guys, but I don't want to minimize anyone. They haven't lost any stars yet. Vegas isn't moving their win total, but it's still not what you want to see. So, that's where we're at with that. Let's see here. That's all I got, really. You want to do one for the road? Let's do one for the road. Okay, one for the road before you go. I talked about Jamar Chase being one of the top 2 or 3 bargains in the NFL. It got me looking at, like, who the best bargain is in general for the Bengals. So Jamar, we're going to put him aside because he got the big signing bonus at $20 million. He's going to be making a lot. So we'll put Jamar over there at $4.8 million. If you're just looking at this year, Jamar Chase for $4.8 million is the best bargain on the team. But let's look elsewhere. Let's see who it is after that. I looked at Mike Gesicki, $2.5 million. I feel really good about him. Von Bell at $1.2 million. However, this year, the best bargain on the Cincinnati Bengals, and this is another guy who's going to get paid next year, or at least he's going to want a contract next year, Cam Taylor-Britt, the Bengals' number 1 corner. He is just edging toward that lockdown corner status, $1.2 million this year. Cam Taylor-Britt, your number 1 corner for $1.2 million. Best bargain on the team. Best bargain on the team. And again, Jamar is not the only guy who's going to be looking for a deal here if he doesn't get one soon in the next 8, 9, 10, 11 months. Cam Taylor-Britt's going to want one. Evan McPherson, $1.1 million this year. He's a great bargain. He's going to get paid next season. We heard rumblings he might get a deal this offseason. He did not. Same draft class as Jamar, of course. and he's going to get an extension. So he'll probably be the highest paid kicker in the league. And kickers, obviously, they don't have the leverage that Jamar does or that any skill player does, but Evan McPherson deserves to be the top paid kicker in the league, and he probably will be next year. So in the next 12 months, I wrote this down here, like Jamar, obviously T. Higgins, who's on the franchise tag now, Cam Taylor-Britt, Evan McPherson, Cordell Volson, all up for new deals, and Trey Hendrickson's probably going to want one as well. So not all those guys are going to stick around. T is obviously the name that he's the big name that we feel is probably going to leave. I said the other day on my other podcast, Old Sports Stories with Jed DeMusi, if you want to hear us talk about baseball players from the 1920s and how they threw a baseball stand in the stands and someone killed. God, I butchered that. We did an episode the other day where Jed found a guy who played for the White Sox who threw a baseball into the stands, hit someone in the head, killed them. Very sad story, but it's just back. It's called Old Sports Stories because we talk about things that happened in the past, and it's just crazy in the pre-internet era what a bunch of nut jobs so many professional athletes were. So, and we talk about like cool stats and stuff too. But anyways, how did I even get on that? Oh, I told Jed, because he wanted to go down this Bengals rabbit hole. Like, I think if you had to ask me right now, I'd say 30% chance T. Higgins stays in Cincinnati. 70% he's gone, but we'll see. You got to figure out a way to pay most of these guys, but in all likelihood, enjoy them while you can because they're not going to be around too much longer. Just it's how it works. That's like it's almost like you get penalized for drafting well, right? You get Jamar, and it's easy to say, he's number 5 overall pick. There's a lot of number 5 overall pick, top 5 overall picks who don't work out. Look at that draft class with Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. Goodness gracious. So, yeah, T's been great. Got him at 33. 33rd overall. Cam Taylor-Britt, second-round pick. Evan McPherson, a kicker, draft pick, so that's that. But Trey Hendrickson, how many of us really knew much about him when he came over from New Orleans? Now he's, one of the great defensive ends in franchise history. And then Cordell Volson. He was a day 3 pick, and he's not going to demand a lot of money, but he's a starting guard in the NFL. So, and he has been since his rookie season. So the Bengals have to give out a lot of money, and that's what they're thinking, right? They know this. They know a lot more than I do. Promise you that. But they have to look right now and say, yeah, we want to pay Jamar, but we want to pay Cam Taylor-Britt. We have to pay Evan McPherson. Trey Hendrickson briefly requested a trade this offseason. He's going to want new money. A lot of things you got to figure out. It's not just Jamar in a vacuum. So they'll get it figured out. Jamar's going to get paid, but I'm not going to worry about it until August 28th. That's the date. I am officially setting that as a date. So we'll go with that. That's that. That's all I got for you. I am not going to do an episode after the Bears game. I am going to be out of the country for one last vacay before I go, before we really buckle down and get into the season. So the next episode will come out a week from today on Friday, which will be the 23rd of August. And that is an episode where I'm just going to go over best and worst case scenarios for the Bengals this season. I'm not going to get too into the weeds with it, but it was kind of a fun, like, here's what happens if things go right. Here's what happens if things go wrong. And I enjoyed it. I think you will too. Love the feedback on that kind of stuff. Maybe I'm being too optimistic. Maybe I'm being too harsh. So if you want to chime in, I'm at Matt Edwards on the website formerly known as X, or no, formerly known as Twitter. Now it's called X. You can't call it X. You just can't do it. But yeah, please chime in. I love that. If you like the podcast, tell a friend about it. Give it a rating. Subscribe, do all that fun stuff. It makes a big difference. There's a YouTube channel, In the Jungle Pod. Leave a comment. Nice one, mean one, whatever you want to do. Appreciate the feedback. Appreciate you tuning in. It's In the Jungle. I'm Matt Edwards. We will see you again 1 week from today on Friday. What did I say it was? 23rd. See you then.